Hey y'all, welcome to today's video and welcome to my kitchen. We'll be doing some canning today and wanted to bring you along. Not long ago I did a back to the basics canning 101 on water bath canning and took you through that whole process with me. And today I'm going to be making some chicken broth and I'm going to be pressure canning it. So I thought I would bring you along and show you how I'm doing that. Now, pressure canning is obviously different from water bath canning, and there's reasons why you would want to pressure can. Foods that are lower in acidity, your meats, a lot of your vegetables, they need to be pressure canned, soups, those kinds of things. And so being able to pressure can, having a pressure canner is incredibly beneficial. A lot of people are intimidated by it, and I get it. I was for a long time too. I would go and can with my mama, and as long as she was there, I was like, yeah, let's pressure can. But then the minute I needed to do it by myself, I was intimidated. I stepped out of my comfort zone, and guess what? It worked out. I'm so glad that I did because it opened up so many more doors when it comes to canning. The canner that I'm using today, it was my mama's, so it's an older canner. All the parts have been replaced on it though, but it is an older canner. All canners come with a booklet. Mama even kept the book for this canner with it, so I still have it. Read through the whole book on your canner because different canners operate a little bit different. So just because you see me do something one way today, there are a lot of things that are similar across the board, but then there are things that are different for different canners. So go ahead and read that whole book that came with your canner. Lots of pressure canners, especially new ones, have a lot of great safety features, so don't be intimidated by it. Have some background knowledge on it, read through that book, be prepared, but don't be intimidated or scared because your canner's there to help you. I'll share with you exactly what I'm doing today and talk you through some of the things, especially things that are similar across all pressure canning, and you'll get to see me can some chicken broth today. We're gonna have chicken casserole for dinner tonight, and I thought if I've got to cook a chicken anyway, let's make some broth. That's something I love to do. So I'm gonna get a big pot. I'm gonna put my my chicken's still frozen, and that's perfectly fine. I'm gonna put it in the pot. I'm gonna put some great vegetables and different things in there with it, cover it with water, and it's gonna cook for several hours. Then I can pull the meat off of the chicken to use for dinner tonight, and I'll have some great broth to can. Let's get over to the stove and get started. To get my chicken broth started, I'm just opening up my chicken. It was frozen, and I'm putting that into my big pot. This is one of our chickens that we raised and butchered here on our homestead. You can pick up a chicken at the grocery store if that's what you need to do. I also put in a chicken neck and a couple chicken feet because I had them. They're packed full of collagen and good vitamins and minerals, but if you want to leave those out, you can. This bag here is a bag of vegetables that I have in my freezer. This is the peels off of onions and carrots, the tops off of celery. I keep those in my freezer, and when I get ready to make broth, I just pull that bag out and dump it in. If you needed to, you could buy some vegetables from the store, but I like to keep those scraps in my freezer and use those because when it's all said and done, we're going to strain this out and we'll have all the good flavor and nutrients from those vegetables. I'm adding about a tablespoon of pink Himalayan salt and probably about 15 or so peppercorns. You could also put garlic in this if you wanted to, but I usually just stick to some salt and pepper. And then I put in 20 cups of water. You want to cover your chicken with water or get pretty close, and then we're going to cover it and we're going to bring it to a boil. Then we'll reduce it to a simmer and let it go for a long time, at least 3 hours. The longer you go, the better. I brought this to a boil and then reduced it to a simmer, and it's been simmering for several hours now. You want to go at least 3 hours. We're pushing like 5 or 6 hours now. I'm going to take my chicken out so that I have that meat for dinner tonight, and then I'm going to strain off all the vegetables and little pieces of chicken, bones, anything extra that might be in there so that all I have is the liquid so that I can can it. Here is my beautiful canner, and I've got half a gallon of water in the bottom. There's a rack, and then I poured the water in. The manual for this canner says to put in half a gallon of water. I've heard people say 3 inches, heard people say 3 quarts. The manual for this says half a gallon, and Mama and Papa used it so much that they could just look at it and tell when it was right. And the last time that I canned with Papa, I asked him after I put the water in, does this look about right? And he said it did, and that was with half a gallon. So that's what's in there. I've also got my jar sitting down in here, and I have this turned on, letting everything get warm. Just like water bath canning, you want to try to keep everything the same temperature. So I'm going to be putting hot broth into what needs to be hot jars, and then into a hot canner. This is a Presto canner. Did I mention that? And it has a rubber seal, and these do have to be replaced from time to time. This is a new one on here. I soaked it in some hot water for a little while. It's what Papa always did, so that's what I do. And then I put it back in the lid. I've also seen people rub it down with some olive oil to help it seal and to slide well when you put the lid on, but Papa always just soaked it in some hot water and then put it on. This lid has a dial gauge, and it has a spot for a weight. This valve right here is where the weight will go. You want to hold this up to light. You want to hold this up to some light and look through it and make sure that it's not clogged up, because that's how your steam is going to escape. And then this right here is the airlock, and that will pop up once pressure is built inside of the pressure canner. So you'll get to see that in just a minute. This dial on the front helps you visually see what the pressure is. You do have to be careful with some of those dial gauges, because they could get off and not be showing the right amount of pressure, which is a good reason to use one that has a weight, because you would actually see it rocking when it got to whatever that weight was, 5, 10, or 15 pounds of pressure. Right now, this lid is not locked on right now. It's just sitting on here. We don't want to build up pressure right now. I'm just letting everything start to warm up so that my jars and my can are warm. Some of these tools that I'm going to be using, like this funnel and the jar lifter, this magnetic lid lifter, they are in a kit together that I have in my Amazon storefront, so you can check that out. It'll be in the description box. It also has a debubbler in it and a tool to measure headspace. So like I said, if you need any of these tools, they'll be linked down in the description box. We strained our chicken broth and got all the chicken out, all the vegetables. We'll have the chicken with our dinner tonight. We'll compost the rest of it. It still has just a few pieces of things that made it through the strainer, so I'm going to run it through another strainer as I put it in the jar. This particular recipe needs a 1-inch headspace. That's 1 inch from the top of the liquid to the top of the jar, and so that's what I'm going to be looking for as I put this in. You can usually use the markings on the band to measure headspace too, and to the bottom of the rim is usually about 1 inch. When we put this in the canner, it's going to be creating a vacuum and sucking the air out. So if you don't have enough space, you will siphon the contents of your jar out. We're wiping the rim with a little bit of vinegar. The vinegar will cut through any grease that might be on it or oil so that we get a good seal. It's also another chance to check and make sure you don't have any cracks. I looked at all the jars when I was washing them and made sure there were no nicks or anything, because that could also keep you from having a good seal. I have my lid or my flat, and I'm going to put this on. I had it in some warm water, not boiling. I just had it heating up so that the rubber seal on the bottom starts to get soft. And I've been using these 4 jars lids, and I've been really impressed by them. Now my band or my ring goes on fingertip tight. That means you just take it and turn it just as tight as your fingertips will get it. You don't crank it down. Again, air is going to be coming out of the jar. If you crank it down too tight, it won't be able to come out and your lid could buckle. This one can go back over in the canner, and we'll keep filling the rest of our jars.
The dehydrator as my pillow.
Now that our jars are in here, we can go ahead and lock on the lid. The Prestos have arrows to help you line it up. Shows you which way is open and closed. Make sure it sits down on there and then lock it closed. Now I'm going to turn the heat on high and we're going to let this start building up steam. You'll see steam starting to come out of this vent here, and once it's coming out good, I'll show you what that looks like and we'll go on to the next step. Now those jars were clean, but they were not sterilized. They're going to get sterilized in the canning process, so as long as they're clean. Same thing for the flats and the rings. I heated them up to soften the seal, but they'll be sterilized in the canning process. This particular recipe calls for 11 psi, 20 minutes for pints and 25 minutes for quarts. If you have a dial gauge and you can adjust your heat to keep it at 11, so if it starts to go up too much, you turn the heat down. If you notice it gets right at 11, you might want to cut it up. You can do that. If you have the weights, I would use a 15-pound weight. If you're over the PSI a little bit, that's okay. You just don't want to fall under it. If you fall under it, you have to get back up to that pressure and then start your timer over again. Also, if you're over 1,000 feet above sea level, and you can easily Google your altitude, you will need to use 15 pounds. Mama and Papa always used the 15-pound weight, so that's what I'm going to use today. We're right at 1,000 feet. We're a little bit below it, but they always use the 15, so that's what I'm using too. The first thing you're going to notice is some water spurting out of the vent, which is a good sign, but that's not where you start your venting time. You want to wait till you have a steady stream of steam coming out. It's kind of hard to see against this backsplash and stove. You can see it right there. You want a steady stream of steam, and once you see that, you start timing for 10 minutes and let that steam build up. That's what this has been doing. It's been doing this for 10 minutes, so now I can put my weight on. And that is going to cause pressure to start building up inside of the canner. This airlock has popped up that shows that pressure is building up inside of the canner, and I can watch this dial go up. If you are adjusting your PSI based on a dial, you will have to adjust the heat on your stove to keep it where you want it. A weight will help, because once it gets to the 15 PSI, this is going to start to rock, and it lets out just enough steam to keep it there. You may have to adjust the heat on your stove just a little bit, but not much. This does a lot of that work, and it lets you know where you're at. And once I get to the PSI I need to be at, that's when my timer for the canning process starts. For these quarts, that's 25 minutes. I've reached my 15 pounds of pressure. My weight is starting to jiggle, and we just want to keep it in a nice steady rock. If I have to adjust the heat, I can, but we want just a nice steady rock. The weight's going to help you maintain the right amount of pressure, so you don't have to babysit it quite as much, but I still stay in the kitchen the whole time the canner's going. My timer went off, so my 25 minutes is up. I turned the heat off on the stove, and then I actually moved this over to an eye that was cool. And I'm leaving it here until the pressure goes all the way down. I'm not opening the lid. I'm not taking the weight off. It's going to stay like this until the pressure goes all the way down. My dial will be at 0. This airlock will fall back down, and that's when I can remove the weight and open the lid. Until then, it just sits here and cools off. We're all the way down to 0 on this gauge, so I'm going to take the weight off. There's no steam coming out, so that means we're good to open. Now, most canners, the manuals will tell you you can go ahead and open this up, open it away from you so the steam goes that way, you don't get burnt, and you go ahead and take your jars out. But I found that I like to just crack it a little bit and let it sit here for another 10 minutes or so and keep cooling down, because the slower you can cool it down, the less likely it is that the liquid will siphon out of the jar. So I'm going to leave it cracked like that for a few more minutes, and then I'll take them out. As they start to cool, the little buttons on the top pop down. That lets you know they're sealed. Don't ever push them down yourself. Let them do it on their own. That way it's a true seal. Now I'm going to let these sit here and completely cool off. If one did not seal, I would put it in the refrigerator and use it first. Now if these are sealed, I'm going to let them completely cool, make sure they stay sealed, and then tomorrow I'll write on the top and I'll loosen the band up. You don't want to leave the band tightened down too much because that could create a false seal. Some people take the bands completely off. I loosen mine. That way I can just store them on the jars. And if there's anything sticky or any residue on it, you can wipe them down good then too. Supper's done. Our chicken casserole got finished up, so we're gonna eat. Audrey says she gave it a thumbs up. She said it's good. So I'm gonna eat supper. I hope you got some helpful information out of today's pressure canning video. I love you. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, y'all.